Hi, my name is Pascal and this is work I have conducted with my colleagues at the German Research Center for Artificial Intelligence, and in the next minutes I want to give you a brief overview on our paper Streamer Cell, a paper that is situated in the context of live streaming. And live streaming is a thing these days, and a lot of research has been done so far. One finding here is that interactivity is one of the main reasons why live streaming is so successful these days. There are many features for this, for example, a real-time chat in which viewers can talk to each other, but also to the streamer, or polling systems in which streamers can offer viewers, for example, the option to decide what should be done next in the stream. These features are content independent. This means that they function independent of what happens in the stream. In contrast, especially in game live streams, we also have content-dependent interaction. Here is an example of an audience participation game in which the viewers can alter how the game proceeds. For instance, they can alter which enemies appear that the streamer needs to face in the game. Obviously, if the underlying game changes, also the influence options would need to be adapted. In contrast to the content-independent interactions, though, such options offer potentially more severe influence capabilities to the audience. Based on this, we asked ourselves whether there are more content-independent influence options, and we came up with 3 general modification category ideas. In room modifications, viewers would be able to manipulate something in the streamer's room. For example, viewers could activate the lights in the room. Streamer modifications, in contrast, would cover something that the streamer is wearing. For example, viewers could activate sensors to show their readings in the stream, or they could activate actuators, for example, activating vibration feedback on the streamer's body. Finally, I/O modifications would cover the streamer's hardware. The audience, for example, would be able to flip the streamer's screen content or to swap key bindings while the streamer is playing games. Given these examples, you might now understand why we named the paper Streamer Cell. As we could imagine many more instances of these categories, in the very first step we conducted an online study to find out which options viewers can imagine, how they perceive these, and in general, how they perceive such kind of influence. We gave only textual representations of the ideas to not bias them with specific screenshots or individual streamers, and asked them to take a general viewpoint for answering our questions. In addition, we asked them to consider that they alone could decide whether or not they want to enable modifications. Given the time, I can only present some of the main findings here, and we start with the main categories. For every category, we asked participants before they should provide their own ideas for category instances and before seeing any of our ideas, whether they would enjoy this category. We asked the very same question after having generated own ideas and having rated ours, and in nearly all cases, the ratings increased. More than half the sample would enjoy these ideas to a certain extent in a stream. Exceptions here are only the actuators and to a certain extent also the I/O modifications. We will come to reasons for this on the next slides. Also interesting was that the individual rating for instances received even higher ratings than the ratings to the category itself, showing that it highly depends on the kind of influence feature offered in how the category is perceived. And you can find the list of our instance ideas and their ratings in the paper. Participants also provided a lot of suggestions per category that can also be found in the paper and that can be used, of course, for upcoming follow-up research. Also interesting was that some of these suggestions made for the I/O modification category could also be seen to assist the streamer, making the audience kind of a technical co-creator in the stream. Overall, after having seen all modification categories and instances, we asked participants whether they would like to influence the streamer through modifications, to which roughly half the sample agreed to, showing that it is worthwhile to consider this area further. Reason for disliking certain categories could be provided via free text answers, and we coded them qualitatively and found major themes. Most notably here is that viewers would not like to interfere with the streamer or the performances of the streamers in the game that they are presenting in the stream. Another point was that viewers thought that it might harm the viewing experience in general. And these aspects, of course, need to be kept in mind when such options are explored, especially in the light where all audience members can basically influence which kind of modifications are activated. We had also questions on that, but we omitted these in this presentation, but feel free to explore the paper for the question how the viewers would realize this in a stream. Finally, although we wanted to explore content-independent interactive features, the study showed that viewers judge the modifications in respect to the streamer's personality, the stream type, and the game that is currently played. For example, we learned that there are certain game genres that fit the ideas better. Here, single-player survival horror games received the best rating, potentially because of an increased immersion, while round-based strategy games received worse ratings, similar to many of the multiplayer games. And with these findings in mind, let me briefly talk about our second study. We wanted to complement the first study with the view of streamers. To this end, we set up a lab study in which streamers would experience a best-case setting based on what we found before. This means that they would play a survival horror game, in our case that was the game Slenderman, and would experience the best-rated modifications from the first online study, and they would experience that in a randomized order for a specific time with pauses in between them. In addition, streamers knew that there is no live audience. Instead, they should record a Let's Play video that they could share afterwards with their viewers. And this was done to make the setup comparable across streamers. With the best case study, we wanted to understand whether streamers would be inclined to use these modifications in their streams, and if they would dislike it even in the best case setting, it would imply that these kind of options should not be considered further. Core findings here were that all streamers appreciate the idea and would use it in their own streams. In addition, they partially judged the modification instances that we used differently to how viewers have rated them, showing that it is reasonable to not just rely on the own individual feeling as a streamer of how viewers would react to certain features that streamers introduce in their streams. It also became clear that such approaches would need many customization options to account for the streamer's preferences, especially when it comes down to how viewers would activate the different features in a live stream together. Some streamers would give their regulars more impact, or only those having donated or subscribed to their channel. Others would allow every viewer to participate. Also, the context dependency was mentioned again. Besides the aspect mentioned before in the online study, they also mentioned a situational dependency. Instances of modifications depend on the game situation when activated, so there could be better or worse game situations, obviously. More details on the whole second study can be found in the paper. Taken together, we learned that having such kind of content-independent influence option is something that can be considered, as many viewers and streamers saw appeal in it. But at the same time, we learned that the context matters, and that although technically content-independent influence is possible, in fact, individual instances are judged in respect to many aspects, making it again kind of content-dependent. We found that the game played, the game situation, the game genre, the streamer's personality, and the stream type are relevant factors here. Nonetheless, in this paper, we are mainly interested in the general case, and we're not looking for specific context factors, which is why this is open for future work. And to conclude, this paper was a first broad exploration of this topic, and we showed that this is worthwhile to consider in the future. Thanks a lot for listening.